My fellow Blerds, my casual black anime fans, fans of all kinds, I think it's time that we have a family discussion. I haven't been in the anime community for that long, and I would say it's almost been a year since I was introduced to the black nerd fandom, and I can say it's been very beautiful. I love the joy that people can find in fandoms and in community that forms from it. I feel like there's like this symbiotic relationship between black people and anime. I get that everyone likes anime, don't come for me, but I'm noticing with being an anime fan and any fandom that there's a lot of bad and wild things that come with it as well. And to go deeper into this genre of entertainment, you find that there's people that have a lot of hot takes, and I mean a lot of hot takes. What anime is better? People gatekeeping who's a real anime fan, sub or dub, Dragon Ball Z, One Piece is the greatest anime of all time. Think pieces and videos of people critiquing and praising a character, which is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just a part of the medium. It's part of the game, like with anything of entertainment. But with some people, their takes can come off really angry. And speaking specifically to the Blerd community, are we okay? I know we can be so united because melanated people are enjoying such a great medium of entertainment like anime, but why at the same time does it feel like we divide ourselves constantly? I want to be sensitive to this topic because I have been an anime fan for only a while. I don't know about other ethnic groups, but I can speak for myself. I feel like being a young black boy and teen can be difficult. I had and still do have insecurities that hindered me. Some self-projected because I didn't like the way I looked back in high school. I didn't like how dark I was. I didn't like how nappy my hair was, how ashy my skin got. Not you. Okay, maybe just me. But I also had experience of people not thinking I was attractive as a black male, or I was made fun of for how dark I was. Ironically, by other black people just as dark as me, which was weird, and I struggled with those things that I tried to compensate by being an athlete, getting braces, making sure I wore lotion. But one of the things that I never thought as a black boy growing up is that I didn't think that women rejected me because I was a nerd or an anime nerd. I don't have that experience of going through the hardship of dating and being a black nerd in fandom in my younger years, or getting made fun of for liking anime, nor getting passed over by women because I was a nerd. I got passed over for other reasons, but that's neither here nor there. And I realized that certain experiences I had with women in high school projected ways that I felt about certain women as I got older. As people, as flawed human beings, we are made up of full of experiences that develop us. And as we continue to mature, and sometimes we shed off those perceptions, and then other times we project them on social media for people to see and critique, which can start a wildfire. I came across this video that was triggering to so many black women who are nerds because the creator was on TikTok made the claim that hot black nerd females did not exist back in the day or in his day. Now, I want to play 3 clips, one from this creator explaining his case, one from my brother Rain the Governor, and one from my friend Delia from the Culture by Culture podcast. And I think these 3 perspectives that I want to platform are just going to be very different because we are different people with different experiences. And one of the things that I want to be careful about is not to assume that everyone's experience is objective, but in all of the experiences that are shared, we as black nerds can learn from each other. Because if I'm being honest, whenever I see controversy in the black Blerd community, it seems like people aren't talking to each other. Everyone's just talking past each other, and we should stop that. Before I do that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Say hi, Ponyo. This is my cat, and I think she wants to say hi, or she doesn't. I just picked her up for clout because YouTube likes cats.
One name that I ran into a young lady there. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful black woman. Let me tell you, beautiful black woman. And she was a nerd. Loved manga, watched Korean films while I listened to K-pop and all of that. I was literally about to fall in love, but she told me she had a boyfriend. I said, okay, respect, respect, respect. But like, even that, bro, y'all don't even understand. Like, black nerds nowadays, black nerds, y'all 2000s babies, late 90s babies, y'all don't even understand that. Late 90s babies might get it. Even just seeing black women that are nerds, proud about it, and attractive too, bro, that was not around in our era, bro. Like, it was like, bro, like, When I was growing up, if you found a black woman that was attractive and she was a nerd too, she wouldn't even like the same nerd shit that you liked, but just because you could tell she intellectually was kind of like on that same kind of path, you would kind of vibe with it, bro. And it's like, man, it's a different era, bro.
With this first video, he's sharing his experience. He's sharing about in his era of growing up, not sure how old he is that there weren't many people who were outright nerdish. And maybe for the town and place he grew up, he didn't see it often, which that's his experience. There were so many women that took this video, and the main critique of the video was that black male nerds weren't looking for or acknowledging black female nerds, which that's a very strong statement. I'm not sure if that's true, especially addressing it as all black nerds at all times. I don't think that's very true, but I do think for a lot of black women that probably felt like a reality, and I don't want to downplay that. We're gonna hear from my friend Delia in a little bit about her experience, but I think, yeah, that's a very strong statement. But I want to play my friend Noah's perspective. I had to interrupt real quick and put this extra part in this video, mainly because there was a two-parter to what he was saying.
In my video talking about how there was no black female nerds in the era to date that I grew up in, a lot of women said, a lot of black women commented and made a lot of reaction videos saying, no, you got it fucked up. There was us. We've been there since the 80s and 90s, but our black counterparts were too busy chasing up the ass of Asian girls and white girls. And before I say what I say, I just want to say this. Enough women left comments saying that, echoing that sentiment, and made videos reacting to where I have to believe that there is some weight to that. I have to believe that. So I'm not going to devalidate what they're saying. Now, if you want my personal take on that, on this idea that the black male nerds were too busy trying to date outside their race to notice the black female nerds, I can't speak to that because I was growing up in between them two cities, Vallejo, California, Montgomery, Alabama. I bring up them two because from middle school to high school, that's where I went. I only knew one black girl my entire tenure, from 13 years old to 18 years old, who was a nerd and liked anime. We gonna take a step further, who was even openly a nerd. I swear to you on my grandmama's grave, I'm not lying to you. I might have grew up a little bit poorer than some of y'all, so that might play a factor too, but I only knew one. And even then, she dated some white guy. Shout out to Nydia. I love you, Nydia. But she dated some white guy at the time. But white kid at the time, because we was like all like 13, 14 years old. I haven't seen her since then. When I moved to Alabama, I met nobody. I mean, you gotta understand, bro. When I went in the early 2000s, 2010, 2012, those of y'all my age range will tell you. It was not cool to be a nerd if you was in the hood, particularly if you was living down south, bro. You couldn't tell people you play Yu-Gi-Oh, Anime, Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball Z, none of that shit. When I was growing up, you was like alone. So in time, be you black, white, or Filipino, there was a certain lack of acceptance of nerds in all of our relative races. The whole reason this topic started was because I was saying that for black people it was hard because if you were a nerd back then, people would challenge your blackness.
Further context to all of this, and I think it's worth it because he further explains what he meant relating to the black nerd woman's experience. And what I thought was also interesting was that in some areas of black community, he also says that being a nerd, your blackness could possibly be in question for being a nerd and liking these things. Now I think that's a significant aspect of the conversation because I've had many of those experiences in my own upbringing, even where I've had my blackness questioned by other people for other things other than being a nerd, which I honestly can feel like one of the most discouraging things ever. So I hope you're enjoying the video. Let's go back to it. He replied to him and another female creator, and kind of gave his perspective as well.
Nerds proud about it and attractive too, bro. That was not.
We were there.
I usually don't make comments on videos like these, but I've seen this a couple times and I thought I'd say something about it. First off, we need to look at how these people have obviously two very different perspectives on who nerds are, because the one guy is wearing a regular behind black shirt and the girl is dressed up like a Legend of Zelda cosplay. Very obviously two different perspectives of what a nerd is. I would assume that the guy is talking more about a casual kind of nerd, which, let's be honest, was not a thing back in the day, back in my high school days. I graduated in 2014. That was like not a thing back then. Before it became mainstream, the casuals were probably usually like closeted or didn't talk about it because they didn't want to get like picked on by the other people around them. And on the other side, like, we got stuff like, oh yeah, we were always there. It's like, let's be honest, there weren't a lot of people who were just like conversing around, like professing their nerd like culture and stuff like that. They weren't like all grouped together in one category. Like, I, as an artist, I drew all the time in school. I was with the nerds, and trust me, I wasn't getting those kind of conversations all the time. So it's a very different category, and it just wasn't like that.
Regns, the governor, is giving his perspective of like, hey, as someone who was always doing this, that was in nerd spaces, in my space, we were not having these types of conversations. The reality of life back in the 90s, 2010s, were people really repping anime like that. Thinking back to my experience before I got into anime like that, I was in high school from like 2011 to 15, and you had nerdish people for sure, and I could say that I saw a lot of black nerds doing their thing. I couldn't, but that's based off my experience. But I think one thing for a fact that everyone can or should at least agree on is the fact that the anime community as a whole was not how it is now. And as a casual anime fan or newer anime fan, I'm okay to admit that. I don't think we should be looking at the community through like rose-colored glasses and make it seem like everyone or this thing was popping back in the day, because obviously I don't think it was. I want to play someone who has very good takes. I love her podcast. Let's bring in Delia to share her experience with us and her thoughts on this idea that black women in fandom didn't exist.
Were black women in fandom? Yeah, of course we were in fandom. We've been in fandom as long as there were fandoms to be in. I think the issue is when men talk about this, it's generally coming from a place of their dominance in fandom. Like, most fandom spaces are curated for men, especially white men specifically. We're seeing a shift away from that, but especially back then, the men's experience in fandom was kind of centered first and foremost. And there have been a lot of fan studies about this, but girls and boys were experiencing two different fandoms. Generally speaking, statistically speaking, boys were more likely to be into what's known as curative fandom. So they're into going out and experiencing the thing, collecting action figures, things like that. And girls were more likely to be into creative or transformative fandom. So you're talking about fan fiction, fan art, making, imagines in like Instagram and stuff like that, creating Tumblr accounts devoted to their fandom. Of course there's overlap, but typically we were sectioned off. And when you think of those two fandom experiences, which is put on a platform and which is made fun of? Typically fan fiction is something that's derided and people make fun of. The imagines you see on like Instagram, those felt silly. So girls were experiencing a certain type of fandom, and that type of fandom was looked down on. So in order to be taken seriously in fandom spaces, we had to mold ourselves into the pre-existing structures. So even though we were writing fan fiction stuff, when we went to fan conventions, we weren't talking about that much. We were having to go to bat to show that we actually knew our stuff and actually knew about fandom. So the concept that we weren't there is just plain not true. On top of that, we're black also as well, and so these spaces are often white, so black people tend to, more than their white counterparts, especially back in the day, to fan in private. So just because you didn't see us doesn't mean we weren't there. And as far as being attractive, like, are attractive black women, where were they? Like, what did you look like when you were young? Like, any geek or nerd, I implore you to think back. Think of 13-year-old you. What did you look like? Were you attractive? I think we need to just, obviously there's a lot more expectations on women and what they need to look like at any age, but like, let's be for real, like, be so for real. So I think a lot of the time what we're seeing now is just this reaction to, wow, there's all these women in these spaces are so much more diverse. And I don't think that emotion is incorrect, but I think the patriarchy programs us to then blame women because you didn't see us there, but we were there. I think instead it's fine to lament the missed opportunity you had in building community in the old fandom spaces. Like, if only, I agree, if only we could have all connected and had a good time. But instead of blaming black women, just move on. Create a more welcoming environment now. Reach out to other nerds. Be welcoming. Make it so that all types of fandom are celebrated rather than certain types of fandom, and stop gatekeeping. That's really the key. We were there. You just didn't see us.
This is why I gotta bring in the experts. I love that she points out that women, especially black women, were in fandom from the jump, but the interactions were very, very different, which I think is important because it furthermore brings out the needed diversity in the space. And it continues to tell people that people in these fandoms aren't monolithic. Everyone doesn't act the same, and that's okay. It's also great that she points out that it's okay to acknowledge the missed opportunity to connect with the opposite sex. But that shouldn't stop you now. Get out there, connect with the female nerds because they are obviously out there on TikTok and social media and also in normal spaces too. But I also talked about this before and Delia mentioned it. Gatekeeping is lame. It's 2023 and trying to pick and choose and set standards for people in the imaginary fandom is weird, especially if you are one of those people that says that they can't get a date because they're a nerd. Maybe it's not because you're a nerd. I don't know. Maybe it's because you want the hottest, most knowledgeable fandom woman ever who was a 10 out of 10. Dream big, my friend. Reach for the stars. But it could be a lot easier if we just stop gatekeeping. I'm just saying, family. Don't shoot the messenger. We should also probably just stop saying that these women overlooked nerds because we were nerds. There's more to you than being a nerd. Bring all three of these perspectives together because I think it's important to hear multiple frameworks of how people think about these things, and especially in the black community of fandom, there can be a hard enough time being a black nerd of any kind, especially if you're cosplaying. That's a whole different world. But if we are wilding against each other, setting standards, calling out pretty black nerds for not being a showy nerd back in the day to prove their nerd status, it can do more harm than good. And I believe the reason that we have this, speaking from an African American perspective, is the issue of identity. As people in general, we are looking to establish identity and a home somewhere in the world. Everyone has different things that they look to in order to feel like they are somebody in this hard world. And then when it comes to fandom, people, especially ones that people hold dear, they get a hold of it and they never let go. And for some black men and black women, the search for identity is crucial because there has been a long history of it trying to be stripped away from us. For some black male nerds, they find their identity in certain fandom, anime fandom, whatever, because it's the only place where they felt like they belong. But if something or someone encroaches on their perceived idea of their fandom, then it causes tension. Hence why the guy in the first video got so much backlash from black women saying that hot black nerds didn't exist. His perspective on fandom. I think if you hold on being an anime nerd or a fan or a geek as your identity, it will ultimately fail you, especially when people who don't fit your category or ideal of one start to entering your space. I believe that you can place your identity in something that's way better and unwavering and unchanging. As a Christian, I believe that Jesus can give you that identity, can give us that identity. We can have confidence in without having someone gatekeeping it from us. Jesus lived the perfect life we cannot live. He died the death that you deserve. He made no mistakes, no sin whatsoever. He rose from the dead so that we can not only experience eternal life now, but establish a relationship with God based solely on Jesus. And he gives us an identity that's way better than any fandom can give us. Friend, son, daughter, Jesus offers us a way better identity that doesn't change based on someone else's standards. Mainly because he's the one that set the bar. And he offers it to anyone if you trust in him. Thanks for watching this video. I know it's very long. Shout out to Noah and Delia for allowing me to have them in this video. Both of these people, I enjoy their work. Noah is a manga artist and Delia is a talented podcaster. Please go check out her stuff. Go like her stuff. Go subscribe to her. Follow her on Instagram. The links will be in the below. If you liked what you watched here, hit that like and subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next video.